The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting a soft orange glow over the small town of Maplewood. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional chirping of crickets and the distant hum of cars passing by. It was the kind of evening that usually brought peace to its residents, a calm before bedtime. But tonight, something felt different. Unsettled, Officer Grayson adjusted his belt as he stepped out of the patrol car, his partner, Officer Miller, following close behind. Both men had been on duty since early morning, responding to calls about barking dogs, parking violations, and even a lost cat. This time, however, their radios crackled with something more serious, a report of suspicious activity near Maplewood Park. The dispatcher's voice was clipped but vague, leaving room for interpretation. As they approached the park, flashlights in hand, they spotted a lone figure sitting on a bench under the dim light of a street lamp. He wasn't running or hiding. Instead, he sat quietly, scrolling through his phone. The man wore a hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, nothing unusual, but the officers exchanged glances. To them, this seemed off. Why would someone be here so late? Let's check it out, Grayson muttered, gripping his flashlight tighter. Miller nodded, though unease flickered across his face. Something about this didn't sit right with him, but years of following protocol pushed those doubts aside. The man looked up as the officers approached, his expression calm but curious. "Evening, officers," he said politely, standing up slowly. His voice carried warmth, not defiance. "Is there a problem?" Grayson frowned. "What are you doing here?" he asked sharply, shining his flashlight directly at the man's face. "My name is Marcus Johnson," the man replied evenly, squinting against the bright beam. "I'm just taking a walk. My daughter loves this park, and I wanted to see if her favorite swing needed fixing." Miller glanced at the playground equipment nearby. Sure enough, one of the swings hung slightly crooked. Still, suspicion lingered. "Do you always take walks this late?" Grayson pressed, his tone accusatory now. Marcus hesitated, sensing the shift in energy. "Sometimes," he admitted. "It helps me clear my head after work." Grayson exchanged another look with Miller. To them, Marcus's calm demeanor only deepened their mistrust. They couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. Was he too composed? Too cooperative? In their minds, these questions morphed into assumptions rooted in bias they weren't fully aware of. "We're going to need to see some ID," Grayson announced firmly, stepping closer. Marcus reached into his pocket without hesitation, pulling out his wallet. But as he did, Grayson grabbed his arm roughly. Slowly, he barked, his grip tightening. Marcus froze, confusion washing over his face. "I'm not resisting," he said softly, raising his free hand in surrender. "You can have my ID," but the damage was done. In that moment, fear replaced curiosity in both officers' eyes. Fear bred by stereotypes they'd internalized over years of working in a system riddled with flaws. Without further questioning, they cuffed Marcus, reading him his rights while ignoring his protests. "What's going on?" Marcus asked, his voice trembling now. "I haven't done anything wrong," neither officer answered. Instead, they led him to the patrol car, ignoring the stares of a few bystanders who had gathered nearby. One woman shook her head disapprovingly, while a teenage boy filmed the scene on his phone. As the car drove away, Marcus stared out the window, disbelief etched onto his face. Back at the station, paperwork was filed, and Marcus was booked for loitering with intent, a charge neither officer could justify beyond gut feelings and unchecked biases. Meanwhile, news of the arrest began to spread through Maplewood like wildfire. For many residents, it was yet another reminder of the deep-seated issues plaguing their community. Little did Grayson and Miller know, this arrest would mark the beginning of a journey neither of them anticipated, one that would force them to confront their own prejudices and the consequences of their actions. By morning, the quiet town of Maplewood was buzzing with whispers. News of Marcus Johnson's arrest had spread like wildfire, fueled by social media posts and hushed conversations at coffee shops, schools, and grocery stores. What should have been an ordinary Thursday turned into a day of tension and unease. For everyone involved, Elena Johnson woke up to the sound of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. Her heart sank as she saw multiple missed calls and messages from friends and neighbors. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Marcus often left early for work, so his absence didn't immediately raise alarm bells. But when she opened the group chat in their neighborhood app, reality hit her like a freight train. A blurry photo of Marcus being led to a police car accompanied a post titled, "Local Teacher Arrested Under Suspicious Circumstances." Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments. Some expressed outrage, calling the arrest unjustified. Others defended the officers, saying they were just doing their job. Elena felt torn between anger, fear, and disbelief. How could this happen? Marcus wasn't just any man, he was a beloved teacher at Maplewood Elementary, known for his patience, kindness, and dedication to his students. He coached soccer on weekends and volunteered at community events. To think he'd be treated like a criminal was unimaginable. "Mommy," a small voice called out from the doorway. Lily, their 6-year-old daughter, stood clutching her stuffed bunny, her wide eyes filled with concern. "Where's Daddy?" Elena forced a smile, though tears threatened to spill down her cheeks. She knelt beside Lily, pulling her close. "Daddy had to go somewhere unexpected last night," she said gently, choosing her words carefully. "But don't worry, sweetie. We'll make sure everything is okay." Lily frowned, clearly unsatisfied with the vague explanation. "Is he coming home soon?" "I hope so," Elena whispered, more to herself than to her daughter. She hugged Lily tightly, trying to mask her own anxiety. Deep down, she knew this wouldn't blow over easily. This wasn't just about Marcus, it was about their family, their dignity, and the trust they had placed in their community. Meanwhile, at the police station, Officers Grayson and Miller sat in the break room, sipping stale coffee while avoiding each other's gaze. Neither spoke about the events of the previous night, but the weight of what had happened hung heavily between them. Outside, reporters had begun gathering, demanding answers about why a respected educator had been detained without clear evidence. Grayson broke the silence first. "You think we did the right thing?" he asked gruffly, not looking at Miller. Miller hesitated, stirring sugar into his cup absent-mindedly. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "Something feels off." "What do you mean, off?" Grayson snapped defensively. "We followed protocol. That guy was acting suspicious." "You saw it too, did I?" Miller countered, his tone quieter but firmer. "All I saw was a man sitting on a bench, checking his phone." He cooperated fully. "No weapons, no threats, just a guy taking a walk." Grayson rubbed his temples, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "It doesn't matter now. What's done is done." But deep inside, doubt gnawed at him. Images of Marcus's face flashed in his mind, the confusion, the calm defiance, the quiet plea for understanding. For the first time in years, Grayson questioned whether his instincts had failed him or if something darker had clouded his judgment. At Team Maplewood Elementary, the ripple effect continued. Students arrived to find their favorite teacher missing. Rumors circulated among the kids, some claiming Mr. Johnson had quit suddenly, others speculating wild theories. Principal Carter addressed the staff during a hurried meeting, urging everyone to remain professional until more information came to light. Still, the mood was somber. Many teachers voiced their support for Marcus, vowing to stand by his side. Later that afternoon, Elena decided to visit the park where Marcus had been arrested. She needed to see it for herself to understand how such a peaceful place could become the center of chaos. As she walked along the familiar path, memories flooded back, picnics with Marcus and Lily, laughter echoing through the trees, countless evenings spent watching the sunset together. Now, all she felt was emptiness. A young couple approached her, cautiously, recognizing her from local news coverage. "Mrs. Johnson?" the woman asked tentatively. "We're so sorry about what happened. If there's anything we can do." Elena nodded, grateful for their kindness but overwhelmed by the attention. "Thank you," she managed, her voice cracking. "Just spread the word. Let people know who Marcus really is." As she left the park, Elena resolved to fight for justice, not just for Marcus, but for every person who had ever been wronged because of prejudice. Little did she know, her courage would inspire others to take a stand, setting off a chain reaction that would challenge the very foundations of the town's beliefs. And somewhere within the walls of the police station, two officers wrestled with their consciences, unaware that their lives and the lives of those around them were about to change forever. The days that followed Marcus Johnson's arrest felt like an eternity for everyone touched by the incident. The tension in Maplewood grew thicker with each passing hour, as whispers turned into heated debates and protests began to form outside the police station. But amidst the chaos, small moments of clarity started to emerge, moments that would eventually force people to confront uncomfortable truths. At the heart of it all was Elena Johnson, who had become both a symbol of resilience and a target of scrutiny. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers reached out to offer support, but not everyone was kind. Some accused her of exaggerating the situation, while others questioned whether Marcus might have done something to provoke the officers. Each negative comment stung, but Elena refused to let doubt consume her. Instead, she channeled her energy into gathering evidence to prove Marcus's innocence. One afternoon, Elena met with Principal Carter at a quiet cafe near the school. She brought along documents detailing Marcus's impeccable record as a teacher, letters of recommendation, awards, and testimonials from parents and colleagues. "This is who my husband is," she said firmly, sliding the folder across the table. "Not some suspicious person lurking in the park." Principal Carter nodded sympathetically. "I've known Marcus for years, Elena. He's one of the best teachers we've ever had. Whatever happened, I'll do everything I can to help clear his name." Elena sighed, relief washing over her momentarily. Still, she knew this wasn't enough. She needed more than words. She needed action. That evening, she decided to visit the park again, hoping to find witnesses or security footage that could shed light on what truly happened. As luck would have it, she ran into Mrs. Harper, an elderly woman who often walked her dog there. "I saw everything," Mrs. Harper confessed after Elena explained why she was there. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Those officers, they didn't give your husband a chance to explain himself. It was heartbreaking to watch." Elena listened intently as Mrs. Harper recounted the events of that night, describing how calm and cooperative Marcus had been despite the escalating tension. "I tried to tell them he was innocent," Mrs. Harper added sadly, "but no one listened." Grateful for the eyewitness account, Elena asked if Mrs. Harper would be willing to testify. The older woman hesitated briefly before nodding. "If it means helping someone who doesn't deserve this, then yes." Meanwhile, officers Grayson and Miller found themselves increasingly isolated within the department. Rumors swirled about their involvement in the controversial arrest, and fellow officers began treating them differently. During roll call, Captain Reynolds addressed the team sternly, reminding everyone of the importance of accountability and public trust. Though he didn't single out Grayson and Miller directly, his message was clear: mistakes couldn't go unchecked. Grayson bristled under the pressure, convinced that he was being unfairly blamed. "We were just doing our jobs," he muttered to Miller during lunch. "Why does everyone act like we're villains?" Miller stared at his untouched sandwich, his mind racing. Unlike Grayson, he couldn't shake the feeling that they'd made a grave error. Memories of Marcus's face haunted him, the way he looked so genuinely confused when handcuffs were slapped onto his wrists. "Maybe we should talk to him," Miller suggested quietly. "Hear his side of the story," Grayson scoffed. "And say what? Sorry we ruined your life?" "That won't fix anything." "It might," Miller insisted, surprising even himself with his conviction. "Look around, man. People are angry. They're losing faith in us. If we don't take responsibility, who will?" For a long moment, Grayson said nothing. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. "Fine. Let's see what he has to say." Back at the detention center, Marcus sat alone in his cell, his thoughts swirling with frustration and sadness. He thought about Lily, wondering how she was coping without him. He thought about Elena, carrying the burden of fighting for justice on her own. And he thought about the officers who had arrested him, trying to understand why they had acted the way they did. When Grayson and Miller arrived, escorted by a guard, Marcus looked up, surprised to see them. For a moment, silence filled the room. Finally, Miller spoke. "We wanted to hear your side of things," he said awkwardly, avoiding eye contact. Marcus studied them carefully, searching for sincerity in their expressions. After a pause, he nodded. "All right," he said softly. "But first, I want you to listen not as officers, but as human beings." As Marcus recounted his version of events, his voice steady and measured, Grayson and Miller listened intently. They heard about his love for teaching, his dedication to his family, and his simple desire to enjoy a peaceful evening in the park. Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. This wasn't the portrait of a dangerous criminal, it was the story of a man whose life had been upended because of assumptions and biases. By the time Marcus finished speaking, both officers felt a weight pressing down on their chests, a mix of guilt, shame, and regret. For the first time, they realized the true impact of their actions. And though they still had much to learn, this conversation marked the beginning of a journey toward understanding and redemption. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon once more, casting long shadows over Maplewood. Change was coming, but it wouldn't come easily. The road ahead would be difficult, requiring courage, honesty, and forgiveness. But for the first time in days, hope flickered faintly in the darkness, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal with effort, and empathy. The conversation between Marcus and the two officers lingered in their minds long after they left the detention center. For Grayson, it was a bitter pill to swallow. His pride clashed with the growing realization that he might have made a grave mistake. Miller, on the other hand, felt a strange sense of clarity. Listening to Marcus's calm yet heartfelt words had opened his eyes to the humanity behind the badge and the responsibility that came with it. That night, as they drove back to the station in silence, Grayson finally broke the tension. "What now?" he asked gruffly, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. His tone was defensive, but there was an undertone of vulnerability beneath the surface. Miller glanced at him briefly before answering. "We fix this," he said firmly. "Somehow," Grayson scoffed. "Fix it? How do you fix locking up an innocent man? It's not like we can undo what happened." "No," Miller agreed quietly, "but we can make things right, or at least try. We owe him that much." Grayson didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stared out the windshield, his jaw clenched. He knew Miller was right, but admitting it felt like surrendering a part of himself. The weight of accountability pressed down on him, heavier than any physical burden he'd ever carried. Meanwhile, Elena Johnson continued her efforts to rally support for Marcus. With Principal Carter's help, she organized a community meeting at Maplewood Elementary to discuss the arrest and its implications. Flyers were posted around town, inviting residents to come together and share their thoughts. The turnout was larger than expected. Parents, teachers, students, and even local business owners packed the auditorium, united by a shared desire for justice. As Elena stood at the podium, her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "My husband is not perfect," she began, pausing to let her words sink in. "But he's a good man, a teacher, a father, a friend. And he doesn't deserve to be treated like a criminal because of the color of his skin." Her speech struck a chord with the audience. Some nodded in agreement, while others wiped away tears. When she finished speaking, applause erupted throughout the room, followed by stories from other community members who had experienced similar injustices. Each story added fuel to the fire of determination burning within the crowd. Among those listening intently was Mrs. Harper, the elderly woman who had witnessed Marcus's arrest. She raised her hand timidly when Elena invited others to speak. "I saw everything that night," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Those officers, they acted without cause. Marcus didn't do anything wrong." Her testimony sparked murmurs of outrage and disbelief among the attendees. One young man stood up, holding his phone aloft. "I recorded part of the arrest," he announced. "It's blurry, but you can see Marcus wasn't resisting. I'll send it to whoever needs it." Elena thanked him profusely, her heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time since Marcus's arrest, she felt a glimmer of hope. The community was rallying behind them, not just for Marcus, but for everyone who had been wronged by prejudice and bias. Back at the police station, Captain Reynolds called Grayson and Miller into his office. His expression was stern but fair as he addressed them. "This situation has gotten out of hand," he said bluntly. "Public trust is at stake, and so is your integrity. What are you going to do about it?" Grayson shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding eye contact. Miller, however, leaned forward earnestly. "Sir, we need to acknowledge our mistake," he said. "Not just privately, but publicly. People deserve to know the truth." Reynolds studied both men carefully before responding. "Acknowledging a mistake isn't enough," he said gravely. "You need to take action. Show this community that you're willing to change, that you're committed to doing better." Grayson sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "What does that look like exactly?" he asked, his frustration evident. "It starts with accountability," Reynolds replied. "Talk to Marcus again. Apologize sincerely. Work with the department to implement training programs focused on bias awareness and de-escalation tactics. And most importantly, listen to your colleagues, to the public, to yourselves." Miller nodded, absorbing every word. Grayson, though reluctant, couldn't deny the wisdom in Reynolds' advice. Slowly, he began to understand that redemption wouldn't come easily, but it was possible if he was willing to put in the work. Later that week, Grayson and Miller returned to the detention center, this time accompanied by Captain Reynolds. They requested another meeting with Marcus, who agreed cautiously. Sitting across from him once more, they offered sincere apologies, not as officers hiding behind badges, but as flawed individuals seeking forgiveness. "We messed up," Grayson admitted, his voice low and raw. "And we're sorry." Marcus listened silently, his expression unreadable. After a moment, he spoke. "Apologies are important," he said evenly. but actions matter more. Prove to me and to this community that you mean what you say." His words hung in the air, challenging yet hopeful. For Grayson and Miller, it was a turning point, a chance to rebuild trust and demonstrate true growth. Outside, the winds of change swept through Maplewood, carrying whispers of progress and resilience. The journey ahead would be difficult, but the seeds of change had been planted. Now, it was up to everyone to nurture them. Steps toward healing. Days following Marcus's second meeting with Grayson and Miller marked a turning point in Maplewood. While tensions still simmered beneath the surface, small but meaningful actions began to pave the way for healing. For the first time, people on both sides of the divide dared to hope that change was possible if only they worked together. Grayson and Miller threw themselves into the task of rebuilding trust, starting with implementing Captain Reynolds' recommendations. They attended mandatory bias awareness workshops led by experts from neighboring cities, where they learned about systemic racism, implicit biases, and the importance of empathy in law enforcement. At first, Grayson struggled to engage fully, his pride making it difficult to confront uncomfortable truths. But as he listened to real-life stories shared by trainers, stories of lives shattered by prejudice, he found himself reflecting deeply on his own behavior. Miller, more open-minded by nature, embraced the training wholeheartedly. He took detailed notes during sessions and asked thoughtful questions, determined to understand how he could improve not just as an officer, but as a person. By the end of the week, even Grayson had softened slightly, admitting to Miller, "I never realized how much my assumptions affected the way I treated people. Their efforts didn't go unnoticed." Word spread among the department that the two officers were taking steps to address their mistakes, earning them cautious respect from colleagues who had previously judged them harshly. Captain Reynolds commended their progress, reminding everyone, during a staff meeting, change starts with accountability. "These men are showing us what that looks like." In the community, Elena Johnson continued to lead the charge for justice. With Principal Carter's support, she organized follow-up meetings at Maplewood Elementary to keep the conversation alive. Attendees included teachers, parents, students, and even some local officials eager to hear the community's concerns. Each gathering focused on actionable solutions, such as creating citizen oversight committees and fostering better communication between residents and law enforcement. One evening, during a particularly emotional session, a young black student named Jamal stood up to share his experience. "I've been stopped by police before," he said softly, his voice trembling, "just because I was walking home late from basketball practice. It made me feel like I wasn't safe even though I wasn't doing anything wrong." His words struck a chord with everyone present. Parents hugged their children tighter, while others wiped away tears. Elena approached Jamal after the meeting, thanking him for speaking out. "Your voice matters," she told him sincerely. "Don't ever stop using it." Inspired by these discussions, the school board announced plans to introduce diversity and inclusion programs district-wide. Teachers volunteered to undergo sensitivity training, and students formed clubs dedicated to promoting equality and understanding. Slowly but surely, Maplewood began transforming, not overnight, but step by step. For Marcus, life remained challenging despite the growing momentum for reform. Being detained had taken a toll on his mental health, leaving him anxious and frustrated. Yet, he refused to let bitterness consume him. During visits with Elena and Lily, he reminded them and himself that forgiveness was key to moving forward. "I'm not saying it's easy," he admitted one evening, holding Lily close, "but holding on to anger won't fix anything. We have to focus on making things better for us and for everyone else." Elena nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "We'll get through this," she promised. Together. Meanwhile, Grayson and Miller visited Marcus again, this time accompanied by Captain Reynolds. Their goal was simple: to update him on the steps they were taking and reassure him of their commitment to change. "We're working on new protocols to prevent situations like yours from happening again," Miller explained earnestly. "And we're pushing for more transparency within the department." Marcus listened carefully, weighing their words. Though skeptical at first, he eventually nodded. "I appreciate the effort," he said quietly. "But remember, it's not just about policies. It's about treating people with dignity and respect, no matter who they are." Reynolds agreed, adding, "That's why we're involving the community in these reforms. Everyone deserves a voice." As weeks turned into months, signs of progress became visible throughout Maplewood. Officers began patrolling neighborhoods on foot rather than in cars, engaging with residents in casual conversations instead of formal interrogations. Community members noticed the shift, and while skepticism lingered, many expressed cautious optimism. At the same time, Marcus's case garnered attention beyond Maplewood, inspiring similar movements in nearby towns. Journalists wrote articles highlighting the story, praising Elena's leadership and the officers' willingness to confront their mistakes. Even national news outlets picked up the story, amplifying calls for systemic reform across the country. Through it all, Marcus held on to hope not just for himself, but for future generations. As he watched Lily play in the park one sunny afternoon, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be long, but every small victory brought them closer to a brighter, fairer world. Little did anyone know, however, that the journey was far from over. Challenges lay ahead, both personal and societal, that would test their resolve once again. But for now, Maplewood stood united, ready to face whatever came next. As the weeks turned into months, Maplewood found itself at a crossroads. The initial wave of outrage over Marcus Johnson's arrest had subsided, but the underlying issues remained unresolved. For many, the fight for justice wasn't just about one man, it was about dismantling years of systemic prejudice and rebuilding trust between law enforcement and the community. Elena Johnson stood at the forefront of this movement, her determination unwavering despite the challenges she faced. She worked tirelessly to ensure that Marcus's case didn't fade into obscurity, organizing rallies, speaking at town hall meetings, and collaborating with local leaders to push for meaningful change. Her efforts earned her both admiration and criticism. Some praised her courage, while others accused her of stirring up unnecessary trouble. But Elena refused to be silenced. One evening, as she prepared for another community meeting, Principal Carter stopped by her home to offer support. "You're doing incredible work, Elena," he said warmly. "But don't forget to take care of yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint." Elena smiled faintly, though exhaustion shadowed her eyes. "I know," she replied softly. "But every time I think about giving up, I remember why we started this fight, to make sure no one else has to go through what Marcus did." Carter nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Just remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together." Meanwhile, Grayson and Miller continued their journey toward redemption. Their participation in bias awareness workshops had opened their eyes to the deep-rooted issues within law enforcement, but true change required more than just understanding, it demanded action. They volunteered to lead discussions with other officers, sharing their experiences and encouraging colleagues to confront their own biases. At first, some officers resisted, dismissing the workshops as unnecessary or overly sensitive. But Grayson, who had initially been the most reluctant participant, surprised everyone by speaking candidly during one session. "I used to think I was always fair," he admitted, his voice steady but tinged with regret. "But I wasn't. And because of that, I hurt someone who didn't deserve it." His honesty resonated with others, breaking down barriers and fostering open dialogue. Slowly, attitudes began to shift, not completely, but enough to inspire hope. Captain Reynolds praised their efforts, emphasizing the importance of leading by example. "Change starts with individuals," he reminded them. "And you two are proving that it's possible." For Marcus, life inside the detention center remained difficult, but small gestures of kindness helped sustain him. Letters poured in from students, parents, and even strangers expressing their support. One letter, written by a young girl named Sophie, brought tears to his eyes. "Dear Mr. Johnson," it read, "you're my favorite teacher ever. Please don't give up. We miss you so much." Each note served as a reminder of the impact he'd made on others and the responsibility he felt to keep fighting for justice. During visits with Elena and Lily, he focused on staying positive, knowing that his family needed him to remain strong. "We'll get through this," he often told them, his voice filled with quiet determination. Together. The turning point came when the district attorney decided to drop all charges against Marcus due to lack of evidence and growing public pressure. The decision sent shockwaves through Maplewood, reigniting debates about accountability and reform. While some celebrated the news as a victory, others questioned whether it went far enough. On the day of Marcus's release, a crowd gathered outside the detention center, holding signs that read "Justice for Marcus" and "Change starts now." As the doors opened and Marcus stepped out, flanked by Elena and Lily, cheers erupted. Tears streamed down his face as he embraced his family, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support. Grayson and Miller were also present, standing quietly at the edge of the crowd. When Marcus noticed them, he hesitated briefly before walking over. Extending his hand, he said simply, "Thank you for showing up today." Miller shook his hand firmly, while Grayson nodded awkwardly, still struggling to find the right words. Though forgiveness wouldn't come easily, this moment marked the beginning of a fragile but hopeful connection. In the weeks that followed, Maplewood continued its march toward progress. Community-led initiatives flourished, including mentorship programs pairing officers with residents and forums where people could voice concerns without fear of judgment. Even small acts of kindness like officers joining neighborhood cleanup events or coaching youth sports teams helped bridge divides, yet challenges persisted. Not everyone believed in the possibility of change, and tensions occasionally flared. But those committed to building a better future refused to give up. They knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they also knew that every step forward mattered. As Marcus returned to teaching, he reminded his students of an important lesson: no matter how hard things get, never stop believing in the power of hope and resilience. Together, we can create a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. And so, Maplewood moved forward, not perfect, but determined. The scars of the past remained, but they served as reminders of how far they'd come and how much farther they still had to go. Months had passed since Marcus Johnson's arrest, and Maplewood was no longer the same town it once was. The events that unfolded in the wake of that fateful night had sparked a transformation, a ripple effect that touched every corner of the community. While scars remained, they served as reminders of lessons learned and progress made. For Marcus, freedom came not just in the form of walking out of the detention center, but also in reclaiming his life. Returning to his classroom felt like stepping back into a familiar embrace. His students greeted him with wide smiles and handmade cards, their affection unmistakable. "Welcome back, Mr. Johnson," they cheered, surrounding him with hugs. For Marcus, this moment was more than just a homecoming. It was proof that love and resilience could overcome even the darkest times. Yet, adjusting to normalcy wasn't easy. Memories of his arrest lingered, haunting him during quiet moments. Elena noticed the toll it took on him and gently encouraged him to seek counseling. "You've carried so much weight for all of us," she said one evening as they sat together on the porch. "It's okay to ask for help." Marcus hesitated at first, reluctant to admit vulnerability. But after attending a few sessions with a therapist recommended by Principal Carter, he began to feel lighter. Talking about his experiences helped him process the pain and focus on rebuilding not just his own life, but the lives of those around him. Grayson and Miller, too, continued their journey of growth. Their efforts to reform policing practices gained momentum, inspiring other departments to adopt similar measures. Workshops on bias awareness became mandatory statewide, and Grayson found himself leading training sessions he never thought he'd participate in. Though he still struggled with moments of doubt, seeing the positive impact of these programs fueled his determination. Miller, meanwhile, became an advocate for community engagement, organizing monthly meetups where officers and residents could connect over coffee or sports. These informal gatherings fostered trust and understanding, breaking down barriers that had long divided them. "It's not about fixing everything overnight," Miller told a group of skeptical colleagues. "It's about showing up consistently and proving we care." Their work didn't go unnoticed. One day, while patrolling the park where Marcus had been arrested, Grayson encountered Mrs. Harper, the elderly woman who had witnessed the incident. She eyed him cautiously before finally speaking. "I see you're trying," she said softly. "That means something." Her words stayed with him, reinforcing the importance of persistence. Change wouldn't happen instantly, but every small effort mattered. In the broader community, Elena's leadership inspired others to take action. Parents organized diversity workshops for children, teaching them the value of empathy and inclusion. Local businesses pledged to hire fairly and support minority-owned enterprises. Even the media played a role, highlighting stories of unity and progress rather than division. The culmination of these efforts came during Maplewood's annual Unity Day celebration, a tradition revived after years of neglect. Residents gathered in the park, sharing food, music, and laughter. A stage was set up for speeches, and when Marcus stepped forward to address the crowd, the applause was thunderous. "Today isn't just about celebrating how far we've come," he began, his voice steady yet emotional. "It's about acknowledging the work we still need to do. We've faced challenges, but we've also shown what's possible when we stand together. His speech resonated deeply, leaving many in tears. As fireworks lit up the night sky, people hugged strangers and vowed to continue fighting for a better future. Still, challenges persisted. Not everyone embraced the changes, some resisted, clinging to old prejudices. Yet, the majority chose hope over fear, unity over division. Marcus often reminded himself and others that progress wasn't linear. Setbacks would occur, but giving up wasn't an option. One evening, as he tucked Lily into bed, she asked, "Daddy, will things always be better now?" He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Not always, sweetheart, but we'll keep working to make them better. And that's what matters." As the seasons changed, so did Maplewood. The scars of the past remained etched into the fabric of the town, but they were no longer wounds. Instead, they symbolized resilience, courage, and the power of collective action. For Marcus, Elena, Grayson, Miller, and countless others, the journey wasn't over. But as they looked toward the horizon, they saw a new dawn, a brighter, fairer future waiting to be built, and in that hope, they found strength. This concludes the story. Let me know if you'd like any revisions or additional details.